Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and I just got back from the new film Prisoners. The disappearance of two young girls who disappear during Thanksgiving, and the search for them in the week after Thanksgiving. The concerned father of one of the girls, played by Hugh Jackman, who has an obsessive quality about finding the guy who took his daughters and thinks it's Paul Dano, so much so that he kidnaps him and begins torturing him until he tells him where they are. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal plays the detective who's trying to investigate what exactly happened to these girls and trying to find out who took them and where they are. The two are kind of at odds with each other as Jake Gyllenhaal is trying to do the right thing by the law, and Hugh Jackman, as the weird survivalist that his character is, to try to figure out where his girls are, because he knows he can protect his family from anything, and this is something that he wasn't prepared for to protect his family from. Prisoners is an adult thriller, and that's not a genre I'm particularly fond of. And Prisoners does not make me more fond of that genre. Now, I am fond of things like Hitchcock and older thrillers. I don't like these thrillers that basically read like crap paperback novels that you would get at the airport and kind of have the intellectual stimulation of that. It's trying to be a darker art movie, but essentially it is just kind of a dressed up paperback novel movie. It just tries to pretend like it's something more. Now, with cinematography by Roger Deakins, it certainly does a good job of pretending it is. This movie is kind of at odds with itself, because you basically, the whole idea of it is you have Jake Gyllenhaal, who's the side of the law and kind of morality, and he's trying to find a resolution to it. He is essentially kind of the good guy. He's the person you're supposed to follow as an audience member, and he's actually very good. I think Jake Gyllenhaal has made a nice, interesting career turn as a police investigator with this and End of Watch. It's a role he's really, really good at. His character is giving the audience a hero to root for, the good guy, essentially, and he's kind of a normal protagonist for this kind of a film, which also I think is why he's such a strong protagonist for this film, probably one of the stronger characters, because he makes the most sense in this setting. Now, Hugh Jackman's character is, I guess, supposed to be some sort of weird existential dilemma, which never really works, actually. It just draws this movie out and makes this movie feel very long. And this whole thing when he captures Paul Dano and starts torturing him was torturous enough to watch. Not because of the imagery was disturbing, just because I didn't feel like Hugh Jackman's character knew where he was going with it, and the filmmaker didn't know where he was going with it either. And it just led into this weird existential dread area that really never worked stylistically, because the idea of the movie and the format of the movie wasn't really working with what it was doing. Lawless had this problem as well, which came out a year ago, where it's really kind of a simpler story that they stuck a lot of other plot lines into and made far more complicated than the story is really equipped to tell. If someone had cut this down and made this primarily about Jake Gyllenhaal's character, I think this film would have worked very, very well. But since it's kind of not sure where it's going, and it's trying to play off these two leads of Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman, which doesn't really work. It's like this movie's trying to be two different movies and only succeeds at one, and Hugh Jackman's plotline I don't think was very successful. The best thrillers are the ones that are direct and very simple and kind of have an aim and a purpose to what they're doing artistically. And when you kind of mess around and all this other stuff and go on these side avenues, thrillers, you really can't do that. And when you do that, you make these forgettable thrillers that in like 10 years time, no one's going to be talking about Prisoners. I mean, is anyone still talking about Mystic River? And Prisoners is kind of in that same vein, where it's not going to be influential, it's not important, it's not interesting, but it's a big deal at the fucking time because the people who like it absolutely love it and rave about it, and we have to overhear it about this stupid thing. Roger Deakins certainly made it look amazing. What he does with certain light sources, which he did a lot in Skyfall. This isn't as well shot as Skyfall, especially when Jake Gyllenhaal goes into this basement at one point, the way he used the light source there. There's a car chase scene towards the end that is absolutely amazing looking. And it's just like a very beautifully shot film, but I don't think this director really let Roger Deakins go the way Sam Mendes or the Coen brothers do. Those are the kind of directors I think Deakins really shines with, because they seem to know how to use them a lot better. This director, I don't think is as equipped with Roger Deakins. It's hard to talk about this film without spoiling it. Before I go into the spoilers, I just don't think this is that amazing of a film. I think it's alright. I think it dragged on too long. There's not much separating this from a procedural crime TV show. A crime procedural actually could teach us some lessons about being a functional film, because if it was a crime procedural, you would have just stuck with Jake Gyllenhaal's character and kind of gone to Hugh Jackman's character. But this film kind of indulges in it way too much, and you're just stuck in this world that you don't need to be in, when Jake Gyllenhaal is really the person advancing the plot a lot more, instead of dwelling in the existentialism of this house with Hugh Jackman. Alright, so if you have seen Prisoners, then you can go on and watch further. If you have not seen Prisoners, I would like it if you don't continue, since this is the spoiler section. The ending is the real problem I have, and how they wrap everything up, because Jake Gyllenhaal, clearly, a lot of people have said this before, but he has like no visual memory, because why didn't he remember that thing at the beginning in the church to figure out who the kidnappers were when he found that guy, and we could have wrapped this up a lot sooner. When you do wrap it all up, it's like the whole thing with Paul Dano, and then he's reunited with the family he was kidnapped from. I don't know how that happened exactly, so I just sit for 2.5 hours of all this bullshit, and I don't figure out how that came together. With Hugh Jackman, the function of his character didn't make a lot of sense to me. I think Jake Gyllenhaal's character, that made sense, but Hugh Jackman, he's just so out on a limb on certain things. When he gets to the end with Melissa Leo, it's like, okay, he figured it out, but cops out on itself. Because if you're really going to be in this artier movie vein, in this existential vein or whatever, and this film is very influenced by Zodiac, and very much would love to be something as deep as Zodiac. But I think the thing that made Zodiac so cool is Zodiac wasn't concerned with commercial prospects as much as Prisoners is. Prisoners needs an ending that is a good, wrapped up with a bow ending for modern mainstream audiences, and that's kind of where Prisoners undoes itself. You get to this ending where everything's wrapped up, and the girls, we find the girls and everything, and it's like, okay, everything's fine, or is it? Because of that stupid ending. When you're not sure if they find Hugh Jackman or not, which I think is like beyond stupid. You're pretending you don't have a happy ending when you do. It is a mainstream movie, and it's trying to fight itself, and it isn't working. And it's hurting its flow, it's hurting my attention span with it. It just boggles my mind that people think this is a good movie. I don't mind a good thriller when it's so cut and dry, but when you get into all these stupid avenues of nonsense that I have to get through to get to the main thing, I mean, it's just film. I think when you're doing a big thing like this, you need to be more economical and need to be more focused on a driven story. And it's just like a movie like Prisoners needed more of that focus, but it didn't give itself that focus. It's just kind of all over the place in a lot of different ways. You can kind of figure it out before it happens. There's loose ends that you're not sure where they're going for like a long portion of the movie with like no like, oh, that makes so much sense. It's like, oh, why did you leave that hanging around for so long? I felt very kind of underwhelmed by this very long thriller that dragged its feet for so long. Everything with Hugh Jackman's plotline was pretty much what I don't like about movies. Whereas Jake Gyllenhaal, it's a performance you don't get nominated for, but it drove the film and it was far more important to the film. Whereas Hugh Jackman's performance is showy and bullshit. This movie just needed to be a crime procedural. And it wanted to be, but it didn't want to be. This film needed to make up its fucking mind, because ultimately it's just like, I can't even make up my mind about what it's about, because this movie can't make up its mind about what it's about. So if you have seen Prisoners and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.